So Professor Vukosi is also one of the founders of Lelapa AI, which is a company in South Africa that also is into AI and language translation, especially in the area of NLP. He's one of the founders of Masakani NLP, which is also a grassroots organization for where a lot of people who do NLP, who practice NLP, who want to develop themselves in NLP, participates in projects and research. He's a professor in Pretoria. He has a lot of master students, PhD students as well. He's also one of the co-founders for Deep Learning in Durban. So Deep Learning in Durban is an African yearly conference where machine learning and AI practitioners, AI and entrepreneurs, AI researchers meet, and they kind of connect with each other and form very good association and bonds. Professor Vukosi has given talks in several countries, several places, including Stanford. He's been to the World Economic Forum. He's presented there. He's giving TED Talks. If you go to the internet, you search, you'll find a lot of information about him. But even more interesting is also the fact that he is the chair for data science. It's an ABSA chair. I'm sure we know ABSA, the bank. They have a chair for data science in his university where he is actually the head. So we are very happy and grateful for Professor Vukosi for joining us today. And we are very hopeful to learn a lot from you as well in your research. Professor Vukosi has written a lot of papers in NLP, that's natural language processing, area of NLP, and done a lot of work in NLP as well. So, Prof, we are very, very happy to have you here with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Stefan, for having me. Yeah, and I just normally go by just by Vukosi. It's okay.
Yeah.
And thanks everybody else who's come in. I also had a very, very nice time last year visiting again in Accra and the university, good University of Ghana, and I'm guessing I have to make it to Cape Coast.
Yes.
One of these years. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I will share my screen, and this is a talk I started working on last year. I worked on it in terms of thinking about this with Masibidi, Rue, and Jade. Masibidi and Rue are linguists in South Africa. Masibidi works on Sesotho, Rue works on isiZulu, and then Jade is a long-term friend, co-founder of Masakane, and then also co-founder of Lelapa, where we're at the private company. But I think Stefan has mostly said most of these other things, so I will skip this, but I wear many hats. The reason for doing so is mostly on helping the ecosystem for the African continent when it comes to AI. So I'm very passionate about not just I could be at the university, I could be at a company, but I'm really interested in making sure and more people are able to work in AI on the continent and really work on deep R&D. So this is actually the biggest reason I said yes to this invitation from Stefan. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we will see how kind of this goes. I run the Data Science for Social Impact Lab at the University of Pretoria, and 70% of our work is on natural language processing in African languages, and then the other 30% is then thinking about data science and AI in society, meaning how does data science and AI really make it into other people's hands. So in this talk, I'll go through a couple of things when it comes to natural language processing. I'll stop a bit if there's questions, and then we can go also a little bit into how we're building out more community I know, like, in Ghana, you've guys got Ghana NLP, you've got sorry, I'm trying to remember. There's the Ghana AI meeting, or the big data science meeting that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's great to see these types of things, and then I can provide some context of why they're important. So, um, and the other reason I chose this talk for everybody, including Stefan, was this was me having found a way to get invited to the linguistics conference. The main linguistic conference happens in Southern Africa. And I thought, like, it's an important thing to provide context of what's happening in terms of the current AI revolution, especially when it comes to natural language processing with the large language models, but then why there has to really be a bigger focus on thinking about our languages as Africans. So I think these are things that we typically share across countries. I'm not making huge assumptions about Ghana, but I know that we all have very kind of similar backgrounds, and we tend to then have very similar challenges when it comes to these things. So in South Africa, for example, we have 12 languages, 11 which are written, which include English. And then the 12th language is South African Sign Language. So in a lot of South Africa, bilingual multilingual education is encouraged with trying to promote mother tongue education. There are efforts to preserve and promote local languages, but English is very dominant when it comes to education, media, and governance. But this doesn't make any sense in some ways. I will because this goes against our census, right? So if we use I'm going to use this table just as a heuristic. So if we look at Wikipedia, for example, so here it's how many articles in Wikipedia. This is like last year, I think, to around September. English has 6 million, or almost 7 million Wikipedia articles when you go to Wikipedia. And then the other South African language is Afrikaans, has 111,000. isiZulu has 11,000. And then you go down. My father's language is Xitsonga, that's 750,000. Setswana as my mother's language is about 1,000 compared to the 6 million. Then if you looked at our census, this is 2018, but it's kind of stayed the same. I'll highlight where it's changed a lot. So isiZulu as a first language, so people speaking at home, 25% of the country speaks isiZulu at home as the first language. And isiXhosa here is at 14%, and I think this is now at almost at 20. So if you just added isiZulu and isiXhosa, you're almost at half of the country speaking those two languages at home. But if you look at Wikipedia, right, in terms of if we just use distribution of our country, they are just 0.16 plus 0.02, right? So that shows you kind of the very big imbalance of data that's available for these languages or content. And this really impacts really development of tools. And when I say tools, I'm not just talking about AI. Do you have dictionaries? Do you have thesauri? Do you have grammar checkers? All these things that we might just take for granted for English, right? You have to build them in. There's reasons why Ghana NLP does the work that they do in the Ghanaian languages as well. It's because you want these tools to just easily be available. If they are, it increases the ease of use of the languages in very diverse settings. It can't just be the language you speak at home, but you can't really interact with the world with, right? So what is a low resource language? One, as I said, low availability of resources, data tools. You must be able to discover them. There must be ways to reproduce studies. People might not want to focus on them because if you're in research, people might think that, oh, it's just easier for me to work on something that is a high resource and then benchmarks. And then there's also scale and complexity issues, right? And so this was the paper from Laura and Jade just before Masakani was created, that talks about that for on how what could be these problems. The other paper that I wanted to highlight is the state and fate of linguistic diversity and inclusion from Joshi et al. And where it then classified many languages across these things. We are either in the lowest one, you're in the left behinds, and then the winners are the big languages. So you can see here during that period of the study, they said, like, there's 5 languages: English, Spanish, German, Japanese, and French, where there's 2.5 billion speakers, but there are only 0.28% of all languages that are the winners. And if you look at isiZulu that I just highlighted, it's classified as they're hopeful it might develop, right? And most of the world's languages fall within the left behind, meaning with time, this might just completely disappear, and it's very concerning, right? In different ways. Right. And this is something that we really need to think about, because as I gave as an example, whether it's the internet just on the web, or it's Wikipedia, or like, all these different resources that provide content or data, we need to be thinking about how these low resource languages will be catered for. So, given I'll just say that the audience is much more diverse, I'll want to give some basis. So, what's AI, and then what's natural language processing as a beginning? So, artificial intelligence, typically we look at it from a definition point of view. This is classical, of we have an agent, which is a machine. It exists in some environment to take action to achieve some goal. So if you think of a traffic light, it's a corner of a road. That's the environment. It can turn from green to from green to orange to red, and the goal is just to control traffic, right? You have a search engine. It exists on the internet. You type in something, it goes into these databases. It comes back with some documents, and those are the actions. And the goal is to make sure that those documents are contextual to what you've searched for. This one here is a robot vacuum cleaner. This is at our small little house, and that's one of my daughters. And this robot vacuum cleaner lives in the house. It can move around in the house. It can vacuum, and the goal is to keep the house clean, right? So that's an AI. What's machine learning? Machine learning is a subset of AI that deals with machine learning patterns from data. So let's say you've got 2 data points. We are interested in where the data points are. That's the input, and then the output is what the color of the dot is. So I then ask you, and I say, if I was to drop a dot somewhere here, somewhere on the surface, what color would it be? And the simplest thing to learn as a pattern is that we could learn a decision boundary which is equidistant from the 2 points where they were. And I will say anything on the left in the future, when it drops here, I will just predict that it's going to be red. And anything that's going to be right of this line, I'll predict that it's blue, right? Just because of these two these 2 dots are the only information that I have. So I can't really make more assumptions. The world has more complex data than that. So let's say now your data becomes more complicated. What you need to fit that data is that your decision boundary becomes more complex as well. And just for people who are just on the seminar, on the webinar, you can ask questions in the chat and stuff. And if people do raise their hand and they have a question, it's okay. You've got permission to say, hey, there's a question, and it's fine. Yeah. And then from here, we can take really a leap to kind of modern deep learning, where you might have as an input an image, and then you go through this huge decision boundary, which is a deep neural network, where it can then discern that from this picture, there's actually a dog and not a cat, right? So how this deep network would have been trained is with millions and millions of pictures with tags on them to say what's in that image. Why do we do machine learning? Without machine learning, you would have to write the program that then processes the data, and then you have to say in the data, if you see a pixel, if pixels look like this, then they're like an ear, and then if you have an ear, a snout, and then a tongue, and then paws, maybe you might be a cat, maybe you might be a dog, those types of things. While with machine learning, all you do is you just need to get very high quality data with quality labels in some ways for supervised learning, which is the examples that I've given, and then you don't need to write the program yourself, right? And these also has kind of permeated into things like language. So in natural language processing, you for a lot of people, the first few interactions have either been with a search engine or spam filter in your email. You would have seen virtual assistants now, you've got chatbots, and then you've got translation. So in more classical natural language processing, we tended to talk about tasks. So you might have as an input Dumelang Bagolo, output is like greetings elders. This is translation. This is Setswana to English. it was one of the worst days of the year, being classified as negative, the sentiment analysis, who is the president of South Africa, and then having Cyril Ramaphosa, which is like a question answering or comprehension, a spam, like, this one is spam detection, and then you might also go from a paragraph to like a few sentences, which is summarization. The current space of the world that we're living in, whether it's large language model, diffusion models that are doing image generation, video generation, audio generation, is now just the latest kind of iterations of these type of models, right? So this is not the first time we're going through this hype cycles. Generative AI is a big thing, and it's not going to be the last. But we also can learn from the past in terms of how these things go going into the future. There's going to be a lot of great ideas, like, floating around. Most of them will wither away. Some will come to the top, and they become part of kind of the way that we do things. So another heuristic I can provide is if we think about papers that show up on arXiv, which is a preprint server that are tagged with machine learning or AI. So if you went back a decade ago, you were thinking maybe you were getting 150, 200 papers being uploaded onto arXiv a month. Now we are over like 200 a day. If you just go on arXiv, it's very hard to keep track of how many papers in machine learning and AI are there. So this is a kind of exponential growth. And I think also yesterday there was the results announcements from NVIDIA that is probably showing that this is still going at a very, very fast speed because they are the ones who build a lot of these technologies, right? And a note from my perspective, like, and for language researchers broadly, machines don't understand it language. Yeah, you do. And there's lots of also areas to collaborate. You don't need to necessarily be the AI researcher. There's lots of things, whether it's evaluating how the models are working, checking for bias, checking for cultural sensitivities, those types of things. And also, there's also opportunities of what can we learn from these models also about ourselves, and then also what can models learn from our experiences, and then how do we make all of these things actually fit for purpose. So in this part, I wanted to talk a little bit about some examples from us at Data Science for Social Impact, and then also Masakane broadly. Sorry, Stefan, I didn't put in some from Ghana and LP. I should have. It's just been a very tough week. I had planned to put, but then we can talk about those when I reach kind of the middle point. So as I said, one of the challenges is to get data to build into these systems. So the first project I wanted to talk about is something that we did early last year to finish, was using government information to actually get local language information. So what we did here was we wanted to create data sets that were available for anybody using public data that comes from the government, because it should be for public use, and then making sure it's got metadata. In South Africa, languages like isiNdebele, which is my wife's language, don't have much resources. And we wanted to build upon the prior work of Achumato, which is another project. So we wanted to liberate and prepare textual multilingual data from our government communication information system, which is part of the government, and then extract and align sentences, automate as much of this process, and then provide benchmarks for machine translation. And then you want to release these models also for other people. So in creating the data sets in South Africa, when the parliament sits, when parliament is done, there's a cabinet statement, and then with a major things, and then that statement is translated into, initially shows up on the government website in English, but then gets translated to all the other languages. And we're hoping soon also that they'll also do like signing of these statements, so you can see somebody doing sign language on them, right? And what we wanted to do is to extract from these statements automatically, monitor the website for changes, and then upload. So what we do is we extract from the HTML and prepare a JSON payload. So the JSON file just has the date, the time, the title of each of the statements. You can see the title there. And then the URL for where the speech was put, and then a language payload, which shows all the South African written languages. And in the first part, for this specific paper, it's expanded. We did May 2013 up to December 2022, and it had about 162 statements with their translation. And you can go to this website and get it. And it's actually updated automatically now. It checks every Friday, and if there's a new statement, it automatically scrapes it and puts it together. The other was a government newspaper called Vukuzenzele, which means like wake up and do it for yourself in English, and it's in Sizulu, it's Vukuzenzele. The government publishes two of these newspapers a month, two editions. It's available physically in one edition and then digitally in both. And what's important here to again highlight this issue about availability of resources. So the English Vukuzenzele might have, let's say, between 10 and 20 articles, but then only about 2 or 3 of them will actually be translated into the other South African languages. So in English, it's, lots of articles, but then in Xitsonga or isiZulu, you only have a subset that actually gets translated because there's a cost to it, right? Translation is not free. You need to get people to translate that content, and it becomes expensive. So basically the government is choosing only to translate a few of them. So what we wanted to do is extract the data from PDF. Unfortunately, PDF is not nice for machine processing. So we had to have a process that is human machine, where first there's an automated system just to extract the text in PDF. It's very dirty, and then it gets cleaned up so that what you get is just a TXT file for every article. So that TXT file will have the title, an empty line, the author, if you can figure out the author, like there's an author right there, and then empty line, and then the body of these. And we did this for every PDF in every language. And then what we then do, because you've got that, you can then do the alignment. So once you've done you can align each of the articles and say, this is the same article, but in a different language, right? Once you've done that, you can then also use embeddings. So there's cross-lingual embeddings like Laser from Facebook that allow you that you can get 2 languages, and it can tell you that this sentence in one language is actually the same as the sentence in another language. And with that, then we are able then to one, align, like for example, here it's in Ndebele to English sentences. This is in Vukuzenzele, there were 136. The biggest one, for example, is Sepedi here to English. And then in the government statements, the cabinet statements, you can see here you're like about to 15,000 Siswati to English. But because of the way that we built it, you don't need to use English as pivot. You can use any of the languages. We're just using the English here because of trying to also show the previous studies, but then we can then align sentences from Siswati to isiZulu, isiZulu to isiXhosa, isiXhosa to Tshivenda. And that's a nice thing about being able to create these resources, is now you've got these other pieces of data that weren't there before. A lot of times you find data that just says, and a low resource language to English. We can go low resource language to low resource language as well. As I said, we just wanted to show performance to other work, and we can show like, here you see previous work, like this is Achumato, it's a different project. And then we were able to fill where they didn't have, we can show performance in terms of blue scores in this translation. And the nice thing about it is then you can then like fine tune other models. Here we're fine tuning MTM 100 with Siswati data that we had. Here's some SABC Tinzaba data. This is written in Siswati, and then now we can put it through our model, and then on the other side, it actually then translates it into English, like keeping most of what actually the meaning actually was. So I'll show you here. So this is the model. It's available for anybody to use, and it's open, and it's built on top of kind of the data that we have on here. You can also go to our Hugging Face and see we have a number of models that are available, and then also a number of data sets, and they will always be kind of expanding as time goes on. I think we have the latest version of the MTM 100 is this one, just the Siswati one, because we have a couple of researchers who are trying to use it for different things. I think hopefully I'm correct there. And you also have English to Siswati, so I could go here. Sorry, I like using this example. It is a okay, let's see. I'm not saying this is going to be correct. And I'm not a native Siswati speaker, but I think sometimes I can actually see this just because I can read some isiZulu, that's which is also kind of related. So let's cross fingers together here. Oh yeah, it's actually nice. Lilanga Lelihle So this is day and then a nice or beautiful thing. So that's kind of one. And then let's go back here. All right, cool. Yeah, so that's one thing we can do. The other one, which hopefully for here we provide as an example, is what do you do, like, instead of training a large language model, which is 9 petabytes of data that comes from for English, can you think about smaller models and interventions that you can have? So this is another project that we finalized last year. It is already published now, it's no longer under review. And what we were trying to do here is say, can we do an end-to-end process of collecting data, training a mass language model, and then fine-tuning it later to different tasks. So we spent about 3 years. We collected about 4.5 million tokens or 25 megabytes of Setswana data. And this comes from lots of different sources, but you can see one of the things we were able to get is Vukosi, and then also the government data that we had gotten as well, the right there, and then also some other prior data that had been available before. Another thing to understand is that there used to be this data set called JW300 from Jehovah's Witnesses publications, and just that data set by itself, even though it's biased towards religious content, was almost 5 times, no, more than 5 times the data that we got on the other side. So it's biased towards religion, but for many languages, religious content actually tends to have a lot of resources comparatively to just general content. And the reason we wanted to make sure we also got general content is to try and reduce the effect of that bias. It's very hard. Unfortunately, JW300 is no longer available online, but we had started collecting this before they removed they asked for it to be removed. And then if you do poor data plus JW300, you're somewhere at 25 million. So after this, what you can build is a precursor to a large language model, which is just a language model, a mass language model, where you take in your content, you can remove a word, and then try to build a machine learning model that can predict what word was removed. And to do that, we used I think a Titan NVIDIA GPU, and were able to train 2 models, one with just the poor data without JW300, and another one with JW300. For 3 days each, we trained these models. Once you've done that, you can then do fine tuning. So this is Masakane NER from Masakane, where we compare our performance to big multilingual models. So big multilingual models, this is Afro XMLR. You can see it gets up to 89.4 F1 score, and we can get up to 80.2. We're somewhere in the region. We're not the best, but it's actually good. And then if we look at parts of speech tagging, we see that Poor Bertha JW300 actually beats the models that are actually multilingual and a bit bigger. Just with that, the data that we had was like the model size that we have is just 300 megabytes. You can foresee it just running on a phone if you have to. The other thing we did was go to this Daily News, which is the Botswana government news service, and they've got Setswana news content. So we collected 5,000 news articles, and then we also got them tagged. So we could say what is the category of each news article, and you can see the distribution here. So most have to do with society, some have to do with politics, education, business, and finance. So after we do that, one of the things that we can do is train an automatic news classifier. So if we look at this, we can get up to when we did validation and testing, we can see that the poor Bertha JW300 can get up to 65.4, and this beats actually just using logistic regression and TF-IDF. And here's an example. Okay. So let's see. I can try and show you that as well. So this is hiding face. Bertha. Sorry. And then, yeah. So this is the model, and then we can actually look at the news model. Then we're also going to go to SABC Dita Badikang. So this is the live demo of this. So I can just okay. Let's see, SABC. So SABC is the South African kind of news broadcast news service. So I could take that content there, which actually has to do with crime and justice, just because I read Setswana, it's my mother's language, and I can put that in there and then now say compute for text classification. And again, this is live. You can see the model is loading for the first time. I hadn't thing, and then let's see what it's going to say. And there it is. Crime, law, and justice is number 1. Disaster, accident, emergency services is number 2. So that's the thing we're able to build now. And if people want to use it for other kind of processes, it's open for using those types of things. So that's the thing that you can do, and you can fine tune for tasks, and you don't necessarily need to have a very, very large language model. And you can do, as I said, NER. This is named entity recognition that can identify dates, places, and then this is what's this thing? This is part of speech. Other projects I wanted to highlight where I sit on the steering committee of the Lacuna Fund, and the Lacuna Fund has raised like $20 million, given away $9 million, and I think 3 million, the biggest area that we've funded as the Lacuna Fund, has been around language, and especially on the African continent. So one example is Ken Corpus. And with Ken Corpus, this was based from led by Lillian at Maseno University. And it is a large data set that has many things. So one is speech in different languages that are spoken around Kenya. They had translations for things like Luya, Duoluo, Lamarachi, many. There's transcriptions of Kiswahili. You can see how much audio, and then also parts of speech and question and answers. And these are great kind of initiatives because they're trying to fill in spaces that might be left behind and provide this data that then can be used for people ahead. This is just an example of the Ken Corpus processes of bringing people together, working on creating these resources, and then on the other side, people then build technology using that data. So it's something that is great, and we should look forward to. And Ken Corpus, I think, is already being downloaded more than 300,000 times. It's been available for I think 2 years now. And these are things that people kind of should be doing. And as I said, also at Ghana NLP, there's a lot of work that's going on building resources, building tools. And then from there, you provide a foundation for people to build as time goes on. The thing I wanted to highlight next is the challenge of this insatiable appetite for data and compute that we face at the moment. We've talked about this, so I'll skip. We've talked about some of the data, and when it comes to compute, meaning how do you build these models, this is just another heuristic. If we look now at the availability of compute when it comes to diversity, there's a few companies that have lots of them, and then there's some national HPCs, and Ghana does have, and then there's private and hundreds, which are these newer kind of the ones. You see a very big change because you move out of even having countries having these GPUs, and now these very big companies buying them off. So here's Meta just by itself in 2024 will be buying 350,000 of these. And I think for their new 4,000, they use 24,000 H100s to train that. And I don't even think the whole African continent has over even 10,000 H100 GPUs in total. It shows you that there's a huge issue that has to do with on the other side, we need to identify where data will come to train these models to better represent us. I've hopefully given some ways that you can think about this, but we still need to do this in a responsible and equitable way. We need to protect citizens' private information. Africa also cannot just be a cheap data consumer. We need to build these things here. We need to protect data. We need to create this data in many different ways. I feel like getting bigger, you need more and more parameters, and you need more and more data on them. We need to think about data licensing, who's going to benefit from, and we also have to have a right to research that it's clear that researchers can go access data in terms of being able to work on sets and not be blocked by people just saying that you can't get access to data, even if you're doing it from a public benefit. And as I said, we're not just a data market. We need to provide to protect workers. There was a case, the challenge of content moderation that was being done on behalf of Facebook, and the issues that the people who are working on doing this moderation, working at a company like Summersource, were not healthcare, given the mental health issues that comes to actually looking at some of the worst of the internet and having to then help people through that. Licensing discussions, we do know, and it's not lost on the in some of like from an academic setting, the people who tend to benefit the most at the beginning and also have the skill, have lots of researchers who you can release something today and tomorrow they've already incorporated, or like within a week incorporated it into their technical solutions. And you have to think about where you're going to actually do the research in one way or another. So there is coming a time where we have to think about these licensing discussions, protecting the sources of data, protecting our heritage, and enabling an ecosystem that is sustainable, right? And then lastly, also thinking about how do we balance the power dynamic in these spaces. So maybe for now, questions before I go into a few last thoughts. Yeah, if there's whoa, okay. There's way more people than okay, so I'm also Gamfi asking, how could speakers of these lower resource languages, non-academic specifically, participate in AI research in a way that benefits more people? There's I'll talk a little bit about Masakane when I start again in terms of what Masakane has tried to do. But in Ghana, there's Ghana NLP that's been working, and there have been a lot of grassroots organizations that have come along to try and fill in these gaps. The other some of the things are less it's about championing the languages locally, championing the creation of resources for people, not necessarily for AI. For me, I'm very much about why do we want to do the work that we're doing. For example, there's some parts of our lab that's thinking about how do you summarize things like court judgments in our languages, right? We're not doing it because it's just like, yeah, oh, we can just train the AI more and more, but you want people to be able to understand, right, what's happening in society. So some of that might just be saying, hey, how do we make sure we create these resources because they are for people, they're not for for these things. Having judgments in local language is important. Having public information, health information, education information in local languages is important because we know how that impacts people learning, that people the general health of the public. Those types of things are important. I think I learned, I'll try and find it now, in Ghana, that during COVID, a lot of academics banded together because there weren't a lot of resources in local languages to what's this thing, to communicate how to protect yourselves against COVID. And people created resources, recorded themselves talking about COVID, washing your hands, all those things in local Ghanaian languages like Twi, like Akan, and then made those openly available because that was the important piece. It wasn't to train AI. So that would be my big thing every time when it comes to things like this. So yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, you can write your questions in the box in the chat, or you can raise your hand and then I'll mute you. Yeah, so because so this the one on the court judgments and local languages is quite interesting. Also, of course, some of the other projects you've done, also for us, it will be interesting if we can just test some of our data on the models you have developed, see how they work and how they perform. This will be very interesting. So maybe if I find a master student or a research student interested in that area, probably will try to see how we can use that idea, the ones that you did, how we can just be probably pre-trained, use those pre-trained models, fine-tune them to Ghana data as well and see how they perform.
Yeah. No,
Are you,
yeah,
yeah,
I'll
are
be
you,
very,
yeah,
yeah.
are you doing
No, go
something
ahead.
on, are you doing something on, are you doing something on multilingual or multimodal as well with respect to local languages, low resource languages?
Uh, not at the moment, but I think
Okay.
that that is starting to come. The insights I can give is that I think for many people is to just keep track of what's happening inside Masakani, because I think a lot of people are thinking about those. So whether it's there's going to be more image captioning that is coming along because it's part of the steps to get there. There is a lot of work I think that is going on at the moment in expanding ASR in different ways. I'm hoping to update hopefully by the end of the year that we will have some new ASR data sets, and then things like what is this fine-tuning data
Yeah.
or for alignment that are coming also in African languages. So there's a lot of opportunity that you don't necessarily need to be very big. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need to be thinking of thousands of GPUs, but there's small
Yeah.
steps that you can make where you can bring a lot of good insights. And then on the other side is also doing evaluations. One of the things we see at our lab at the university is that we might not be able to be the people who build the big LLMs, but we want to make sure we can provide ways to evaluate for the languages we're interested in, ways to evaluate them, and then be able to provide feedback so that people can know their limitations.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So any other question? You can raise your hands. You
Oh,
can
sorry. I think there's
then
another question from, okay.
yeah, so someone is
Oh,
asking if the
oh,
videos
yeah.
are
Whoa.
recorded.
Okay. There's a
Yeah.
lot of questions. Sorry.
So
I seem to have
videos,
to.
the videos are recorded on YouTube. We put
Okay.
all of them on YouTube. I'll try to share the link for those who want to watch. Also, there's a second question from Jose. He's saying, as
Yeah.
an incoming linguistic undergraduate student and a young Ghanaian in the diaspora, what are some of the areas in the field that I can keep an eye on to get involved in even support my community from abroad?
Sure. I think as I said, I will talk a little bit in the the next 15 minutes or so about some of that. But then if you're in Ghana, Ghana NLP, there's Indaba X Ghana.
Yeah,
Yeah, please
data
do.
science.
Yeah, that's Ghana. It's a please use that. The languages project is interested in. Daniel, we do a lot of like for us as a lab at the university, we did a lot of the South African languages, and then we've expanded also beyond this project in Swahili. I've learned about sharing it in Kenya. I've done some work for like Lingala in the DRC. So, but then as I've shown you, I try to show like some of the Lacuna funded data sets. For example,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
for Ken Corpus, Luo, and other languages in Kenya. And then you can even look at like projects like Common Voice. I'll put a uh, Common Voice from Mozilla that also has a number of languages and also some African languages. I'm sorry, I'm quickly searching for these things so I can put links because I think that's important. People might be trying to get to these things, so I will share as many links as I can as we're going through these types of things. And then, as I said, if you go to our Hugging Face or you go to our website, as a lab at the University of Pretoria, you can also get some information through that as well. But there are many of us. That please, when you leave here, know that it's not just me, it's not just us as a research group. There's many people who are trying to work through this area. In the interest of time, I think I will go back to this, and then I'll try and find, as I said, the information about the Ghana information. I'm just that was created during COVID. It's just that I might not find it now. I was just searching because I remember I remember finding it, and then now it's just like I've forgotten where it would be. Okay. I'll leave that for now. Stefan, I'll share with you, and then I think you can,
Okay.
you
Okay.
can send it out. Let me see, just wait.
That's fine. Was this founded by Lacuna?
Sorry?
Was this founded by Lacuna?
No. That was done by volunteers, by academics who were volunteers.
Was it speech? Was it speech or
Yeah,
just
there was
text?
speech. Yeah, there was speech as well. Yeah, they recorded themselves, I think, or like, send so that people can send WhatsApp notes. People can use them on radio to explain what was going on. So that was very interesting. And I think, like, as I say, like that is why you work on language, right? This is the real reason. It's
Yeah.
not the the other side. We tend to think like, oh, but then we want another LLM. That's not the point. That is not the point. It's really to get to people where they are, not to put them in situations that they might not be comfortable. Okay, so
Okay.
I will quickly, I know, rush through this. It's just that, I live multiple lives, so I have to take care of another part of it. But I will try to finish off in like 7 minutes, and then I'll do another 5 more minutes of questions. All right. So I tend to say revolutions are fast and slow. It's not just me, it's this thing. And sometimes then you have to think about community, which is the questions that came out at the end. And building grassroots AI is important because on one side, it lowers barriers to entry, it's multidisciplinary, it's inclusive, you address systemic issues, you collaborate, you're independent, and it's also harder to take you down in some ways, holistic and community focused. And this has been something that has gone on and built up over the history of AI. As Stefan said, I was part of the founding team of Deep Learning Indaba and also Masakane. Data Science Africa actually predates this. It's like 2016, 2015, much earlier. And you've seen this keep on going and building up where you see there's Ghana NLP. And hopefully, Stefan, we didn't get it wrong in terms of the timeline. And then you see other projects when it comes to this. Masakane was created as a grassroots organization for natural language processing for African languages, and it means we build together in isiZulu. And this is the board. I think there's a few more members now, but it really wanted to say, how do we then work that you don't just have the technologists, the NLP people, but everybody who creates content, linguists, everybody who's able to work together to build these technologies, and all of them being actually also recognized. So with this, the first big part was, as I said, that machine translation paper, and Masakane has grown and built up a network of people who find themselves anywhere in the world and can work on our languages and really build up. This was us last year at ICLR this is the Africa NLP workshop, which was the largest workshop, I think, at the ICLR conference, which ICLR is like the most prestigious AI conference in the world, and it was the first time being held on the African continent. It was in Rwanda. The first paper we published as a collective was this participatory research paper, which ended up winning the first Wikimedia Research Award from Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, for democratizing the internet. And it's like, Masakane has gone on to build and build and build and like really publish in very lots and lots of different work. And you can go and see this work. And I would say from a AI research perspective, it's likely the most prolific research lab on the continent for AI. And last year we won the Ars Electronica Digital Humanity Award and then got another runner-up for another award in the space. The other thing I want you to take away is nobody's coming to save us. We are always the ones we've been waiting for. The other thing we did was create a deep learning Indaba, as I said, in 2016, 2017. And last year, actually, we had our Indaba in Accra. And there we wanted to say that Africans must become contributors, owners, and shapers of the coming, at that time, AI revolution. And we started at VETS in Johannesburg with 300 people attending, then have grown double to 600 at Stellenbosch, then 600 in Nairobi in Kenya. We went to Tunisia in 2022 with 400 after COVID. And then last year we had 800 people at the University of Ghana in Accra, right? And in last year's one, we had 36 African countries being represented, 45% of them being women. There is no other AI conference that is like this. And it's really a place to come and actually see this thing. This year, we will be going to Senegal in September. Unfortunately, applications have closed, and it's going to be a very, another year of the Indaba. The other thing is that we need to think about the other, the parts. We've built up community, we formalized a lot of the work. There's impact, seniority, and increasing opportunities. We still need to think about how do we absorb the funding that's available. That's not easy. A lot of this funding, unfortunately, is coming from outside the continent. We need to build up opportunities for student professionals on the continent. We need to develop and really support local faculty, lecturers, and professors. We need to choose the areas that are very important for us regionally or per country and work on those, blazing our own path. It's not really about copying. It's really identifying what's important for us. And we need to increase the local R&D investments. So for me, I always try to say we build our strengths together. The reason I'm here, the reason I've worked with Stefan as colleagues is because of that part that by working together, we learn from each other, and then we also strengthen each other across all these things. And we need to make sure that we refer to each other. If somebody asks me something in South Africa and I go like, oh yeah, no, that has to do with something that Stefan does. And I hope the same way that Stefan is doing the same about that. The other part is that we tend to always be talking about this whole thing that Africa is a very young continent. You can see it here. This is kind of a age pyramid. If you look at most of the world except Africa, you see the mode is somewhere around 30 to 40. And then if you go to the EU, it's getting into the 60s. And if you look at North Africa, there is a little bit of the young, but then the modes also in the 30s. But then if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, you are looking at most of the population being under 20. So if we are really building the Africa that we want, we need to think about how young people are part of this, because we're going to get to a point 2050, I think it's expected 1 in every 4 people on the globe is going to be African, and 1 in every 3 newborns is going to be African, right? How do you then think about growth? Do you think about opportunity? You then need to think about what are going to be the drivers of economies in the future. And one of them is going to be AI. AI is not everything. And we need to make sure that young people are part of this thing. And this is why I wear many hats, because we need to resolve everything everywhere all at once. We unfortunately do not have the privilege of just saying we will look at one of these pillars. We need to look at everything and then see how we're going to go into kind of a joint future together. And AI or data science are just one of them. And we just need to make sure that Africans are in charge of these things. What can you do as my last, thing? Listen, understand your local situation and how things work. Make sure you get involved, build networks and support others, urge others to get involved. And as a science or researcher, also become a voice of knowledge to people who are asking these questions. As I said, I've been happy to come here because it's part of, I believe, my responsibility to every citizen on this continent, but also to you as well as fellow researchers and colleagues. Right, in the times of crisis, we all could then all clutch at our collective borders, but the wise always at this time work to build bridges and not these barriers. So I will stop at that so that we can have questions, and then I will share the link to my slides. And yeah, I guess we can do maybe some final questions.
All right, thank you. Because someone has asked, how can we harness the power of this technology to promote and preserve African languages? And what innovative solutions can we develop to make language learning and cultural exchange more accessible and engaging for diverse communities?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. Yeah, as I said, I put that question that's saying, what also can we learn about our languages using AI? I have one student at the moment who's looking at how do we, is there a way for us to evaluate if one language has specific concepts and the other one does not, right? So this is obviously, language is more than just the symbols that you put next to each other, the words that you put next to each other. It also says something about where that language is from geographically, there's cultural nuances, all those things. And it's also by being able to use, you can use AI to try and identify these things, but you're doing it in tandem with working with people in the social sciences who study also us, right? And it becomes a new tool that I think is very interesting for the humanities as well. And that's why I'm also very interested in working with people in the humanities. I think we're hosting a conference with in about a month and a half called Design Justice AI that is looking at these things of bringing people from multiple areas to think about critically about the future of AI together. And some of these things are these opportunities where you have cross or transdisciplinary permeation of ideas. And this, by being able to exploit these things about regional culture, you can then build things that are much more adaptive and make more sense. You can watch my TED talk, my TEDx talk about this with that specific space, especially when thinking about how we all interact with each other. Any
Perfect.
other questions and concerns? Yeah.
Any other question? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, please go
Sorry.
ahead.
Yeah. I will share some resources as I finish off.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, so I'm just furiously typing, going oh, I should have also had this, but I will share some things right now. Yeah, so that if people need to get a hold of me and things, yeah, cool.
Okay. So I mean,
Yeah,
you've already shared the slides to the talk. Is
yeah,
in the chat.
yeah.
And then also you've shared YouTube. You've shared Common Voice. Your Can Corpus.
Oh, I think uh oh, Stefan disconnected a little bit. Hi, Stefan, you're back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I said you shared almost a lot of stuff already.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. You shared another YouTube as well.
yeah.
For as part of resources for training and learning. Okay. Thank you very much, Vukosi, for coming to be with us. Um, as many people online, as I said, I will record.
There's a question about Okay, I'll take this one. Yeah. There's a question about like, Twee has little resources, and then how do like we bring innovative ideas? So John and both Daniel in this area. So that was one of the reasons why I chose to try and give the example of Setswana. I know it's Twee, it's hard. I think we've had this conversation, Stefan, a couple of times of trying to figure out where data might come from. And so one of the things I'm at the moment intrigued by is likely how automatic speech recognition is going to come into the space. And I do believe, John and Daniel, that is an opportunity, that getting the speech systems good is going to also allow the use of multiple sources. So even, for example, radio, where people are speaking in their languages on topics that are important to them. So not just the thing where it's just government speak or speak that is very corporate, is an opportunity. And we are also seeing that in terms of how much data is actually required to really start representing languages in some ways, is starting to reduce for some context. What do I mean by this? So if you have a speech system or an LLM, because it's pre-trained on let's say a wider variety of languages that people are doing that right now, it means that to add a new language, it might not take up as much of data. And this is still things that are worth exploring and testing, right? We might have a bit of a hunch that this is going to be true across many, many languages, but it's worth testing and saying like, okay, if now I don't need to necessarily collect 1,000 hours of Twee, but I could be able to collect 20 hours of Twee with the transcriptions. I can then like build something that can actually do Twee very well. And this is exactly like, when I say talking about Ghana NLP, you can go look at their the Kaya app and the speech recognition system inside there, the translation systems that are inside there. And this gives people that if you care about the language, you can evaluate things, and you can you can really tinker. You can come up with things that are very high quality, and go up against even the biggest in the world. You don't need to count yourself out of this ecosystem. You can still do things that are very, very very, very impactful for your communities.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So I just wanted to actually chip in that even for Ghana NLP, we've done the tree translation, also ASR, and then also for TTS. So if you are interested, you can go and have a look at it as well and test it. Of course, what we have not managed to do over the few years is more of trying to also publish some of the results that we use, or some, at least some parts of the work that we do as well. So it's possible, Daniel, you're asking if it's possible to collaborate. Yes, it's possible to collaborate. Please send me a message if you are interested. Then I can get you how you can collaborate. We need a lot of people to work with. If you are interested to contribute, you can come. Of course, there are a lot of other language resources. There's Learn Africa as well online. They also have a lot of data as well. And I think even more recently, some research support for, I think, Fair Forward also has also been given to them. So these things are ongoing. Hopefully, the more support we get, the possibility of also extending to a lot of the work that we also feel is important to also demonstrate or show, that we'll be able to work in these spaces. So you are welcome. Anybody who is interested to participate, please send me a message as well. If you want to participate in Masakane, you can go online and join Masakane, or Ghana NLP. You can go online and join Ghana NLP as well, or any of these spaces. You can always participate. I mean, the idea is to foster collaboration and to grow the ecosystem, not just in Ghana but across Africa in general. So this is why I'm very happy that Professor Vukosi accepted the invitation to give a talk also here with us. So if you do not have any other question, and Prof, if you have, of course, if you have something else to say, you can say it now, then we can end the meeting.
No, I don't have anything else. Thanks to everybody. I'm also seeing some both meeting all the new faces and then also some friends
Yeah, I
who
think
jumped in on here. Thanks everyone.
I think I saw Daniel. Daniel is there, so I've seen Chris is also online. So I'm sure Daniel, you'll be meeting Daniel in July in Kenya, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm trying to make sure I can make it there. So
Okay. Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for coming. Of course, next month, we'll have another seminar talk also on AI. I'm not sure what it will be. Let's see if we get someone to talk about either NLP or the ethics or something going on in the medical with Google or something like that. Let's see. But thank you all for joining and hope to see you again next month. Thank you, Vukosi, for being part of us as well and sharing your experience with us. Thank you very much.